On a warm summer night in July 1969, millions of Americans gathered around their televisions, holding their breath as a spacecraft traveled nearly 250,000 miles through space. Moments later, a human voice crackled over the radio from the surface of the moon. That single moment changed how we see ourselves, not just as citizens of one nation, but as explorers of an entire universe. Tonight, we'll discover how the first moon landing happened, why it mattered, and what lessons it still teaches us about courage, teamwork, and the power of human curiosity. The story of the first moon landing begins during a time known as the space race. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union were competing to achieve major milestones in space exploration. Each success was seen as proof of scientific strength and technological leadership. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a bold announcement. He challenged the nation to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth before the end of the decade. At the time, this goal seemed almost impossible. Computers were far less powerful than the smartphones we use today. Rockets were still new technology, and no human had ever traveled to the moon. But the United States believed that innovation, determination, and teamwork could make the impossible possible. To lead this effort, the government invested heavily in the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, better known as NASA. Thousands of engineers, scientists, technicians, and astronauts went to work. They tested rockets, designed spacecraft, and solved problems that had never been solved before. This effort became known as the Apollo program, one of the most ambitious scientific projects in human history. After years of preparation, testing, and learning from earlier missions, the United States was finally ready. On the morning of July 16, 1969, a massive rocket called Saturn V stood on the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Inside the spacecraft were 3 astronauts: Neil Armstrong, the mission commander, Buzz Aldrin, the lunar module pilot, and Michael Collins, the command module pilot. At 9:32 a.m., the engines ignited. Flames and smoke filled the air as the rocket slowly lifted off the ground. Within minutes, it was racing towards space at thousands of miles per hour. The mission was called Apollo 11. For the next 3 days, the astronauts traveled through space toward the moon. Along the way, they checked their instruments, monitored the spacecraft, and prepared for the most challenging part of the mission, landing on the lunar surface. When they reached the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin moved into a small spacecraft called the lunar module, named Eagle. Michael Collins stayed behind in orbit, circling the moon and maintaining communication with Earth. Then came the critical moment. As the Eagle descended toward the moon, alarms began sounding inside the cockpit. The onboard computer was overloaded with data. For a few tense seconds, no one knew whether the mission would have to be aborted. But engineers on the ground quickly analyzed the problem and determined it was safe to continue. Armstrong took manual control of the spacecraft, carefully guiding it to a safe landing area. Finally, on July 20, 1969, the lunar module touched down. Armstrong calmly radioed back to Earth. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." Cheers erupted across mission control. Around the world, people celebrated the successful landing. Several hours later, Armstrong prepared to step outside. As he climbed down the ladder and placed his boot onto the dusty surface, he spoke the words that would become one of the most famous quotes in history. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
Buzz Aldrin soon joined him, and together they spent about 2.5 hours exploring the moon. They collected rock samples, took photographs, and set up scientific instruments to study the lunar environment.
Meanwhile, back on Earth, an estimated 600 million people watched the event live on television, making it one of the most widely viewed broadcasts in history. After completing their mission, the astronauts returned safely to their spacecraft and began the journey home. On July 24, 1969, Apollo 11 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, marking the successful end of humanity's first visit to another world.
The first moon landing had a powerful impact on science, technology, and society. First, it demonstrated what humans can achieve through cooperation and shared goals. More than 400,000 people worked on the Apollo program. They came from different backgrounds and professions, but they all contributed to one mission. Second, the technology developed for the moon landing led to innovations that still benefit us today. For example, advances in computer systems helped shape modern electronics. Improvements in communication technology made global connections faster and more reliable. New materials developed for spacecraft improved safety in transportation and medicine. The moon landing also inspired a generation of students to pursue careers in science, engineering, and education. Many people who watched the mission as children later became scientists, astronauts, and innovators themselves. Perhaps most importantly, the event changed how humanity views Earth. When astronauts looked back from space, they saw a small blue planet floating in darkness, without borders or divisions. That image reminded people that we all share the same home. The story of the first moon landing is not just about rockets or technology. It is a story about vision. It shows what can happen when people set a clear goal and work together to achieve it. The mission required patience, planning, and problem solving. It also required courage, not just from the astronauts, but from the thousands of people behind the scenes who believed in the mission. Today, as scientists prepare for new journeys to the moon and even to Mars, the legacy of Apollo 11 continues to guide us. The lesson is simple yet powerful. Great achievements begin with bold ideas. Progress happens through teamwork, and the spirit of exploration can carry humanity farther than we ever imagined. More than half a century later, that first step on the moon still reminds us of something important. The future belongs to those who are willing to reach for it.